here with Jim Blair, and just going to tell us about you've taken a new role from September.
Hi, yes, Dan. I'm going to be a consultant nurse for people with a learning disability at Great Ormond Street Hospital, and I'll also be an honorary associate professor at Kingston and St George's University. So to see how it can improve the transition period between different services, obviously the main one being child to adult services, but also across services that Great Ormond Street link in with, and to ensure and enhance what they've already got there around reasonable adjustments, a lifelong passport, if you like, that includes health, education and other needs for the person, so that they can take it through their journey. So when they become an adult, people have a fuller picture, because it will be held by them, if you like, a patient record that the confidential inquiry it was very in favour of, and many others. Maybe it can be digitised so that those that can have it electronically, and also be attached to reminders for them to go to set appointment. Have they followed up with the GP? Have they been to the dentist or whatever to assist in the annual health check as well? Would be a very good thing. So there's those sort of things looking into as well, the opportunities.
Yeah, the hospital passport is something you're very passionate about. I'd like to see sort of rolled out a lot more than it already has been.
Yeah, I think the hospital passport, put simply, and as I've said before, it does save people's lives, and I think it is something that personally, when I go to hospital, someone without a learning disability, I want to have one. And the passport has morphed into dementia passport. It's used for people with sensory and other physical disabilities, and older people generally, as well as those with mental health problems. So I think really we should just get to a point where there is one generic NHS hospital passport. That day in March 2007, and I was there at the time, the launch of Deaf by Indifference was a really earth-shattering moment. To have a title given by a parent of Deaf by Indifference about clinicians like myself is really quite frightening, and it's very sobering and very scary to think that he felt very strongly, and sadly correctly, that his son had died by the indifference of people like me and like yourselves. It's not people wanting to go out and do people harm and to lead to their deaths. That is a misperception that must be quashed. I've worked for 5 years now at St George's, and I do feel that people go every day to do the best they possibly can. As Mencap rightly have pointed out in many reports and others subsequently, that there is a systemic problem. Change is hard because people very often overestimate the value of what they already have and underestimate the value of what they may gain by giving it up. People often say to you, the grass is greener, it isn't always greener on the other side. Well, if we looked at that, we would all still be in a cave, and the paintings would be splattered around the wall. We wouldn't have progressed at all as a human race. So that really is a non-starter. What we really have got to get to grips with now, and I agree with some of the earlier speakers around the idea that we don't need to splash a lot of cash, we need to use what we've got wisely. We have wasted an awful lot of money on some services that we really didn't need to be commissioning. With that in mind, we need to be innovative. We need to have an approach that is flexible, and we need to have genuine leadership. Now, by that I mean at a national and professional level for those working in social care and in healthcare and everywhere. Do we really have the leaders in post? We have to be pragmatic. We have to be realistic that actually what we've got is a huge pot. But what we don't have is the sense to use it. I feel very angry that when we had money, we misused it so spectacularly. Now we don't have so much money, maybe it's a better time to really be thinking of, does that person really need to be 300 miles away from their family? Is that really providing what they need? No, of course it's not. Parents are the experts, and people with learning disabilities themselves are the people that know best. We work with them, we'll make significant changes. I think it is appalling that I am the only consultant of any persuasion anywhere in the world that is held to account directly by a panel made up of people with a learning disability and family members. The Care Quality Commission are going to inspect acute hospitals, which I very much welcome, and you will not be surprised that they will be considering things like what reasonable adjustments have you got in place, how do you know that they actually work, how are you using the Mental Capacity Act, and we want evidence of all these things and others. So my role currently is 60-30 split, built on a medical model. You might think that's a bit strange, coming from a learning disability perspective. You're right, it's a bit strange, but you know, if you're going to make change, get things where they really can have an impact. And consultant referrals, they understand that, And they also understand the fact that I do education and research, because that's what they do. So it's very easy. Work with them, don't work against, because actually most people are very nice. But it's really about the post, and the reason for it being consultant level was the flaws that MENCAP eloquently identified in the first step by difference, and subsequently Sir Jonathan Michaels in his report demonstrated 3 massive failings: leadership, accountability and responsibility for people with learning disabilities. They travel through acute sectors. I'm the person you will see if you come into A&E. I'm the person you'll see in the next ward, wherever you are, you will see me. I hope that you like me, but if you don't, I will still fight your corner. And that is very important. It's about embedding systematic change. And I'm not going to go through any more of those because we're going to travel through them as I speak. So what are the practical challenges? These are not just challenges for acute hospitals, but I'm focusing on that today. But it's the lack of knowledge about intellectual disability, learning disability, autism or other attention deficits that people with a learning disability may experience. People do require a bit longer. People do need to have their capacity assessed at times, but also the fact that they're not very well at the time needs to be taken into account. So all of these, and the reduced confidence of doctors and nurses and others, bear in mind that very little training is ever provided within their professional pre-programmed training. And St George's 30 years ago was the first and only medical school at that time that you could not qualify from unless you actually had done your learning disability aspects of your training. So why is it the issue? Well, I've spoken to you a bit about that. It's also the fear of getting things wrong. If you think about it, as parents and as people with a learning disability, and those that work with people with learning disabilities, we're used to people with learning disability and how they engage in the world, often in very different ways from other people. But in a busy A&E, when it's mayhem going on, you've got someone who stabbed somebody over there, you've got someone who shot somebody over there, you've got somebody who's on drugs over here, you've got an alcoholic over there, you've got someone with dementia, you've got all these people coming in, then you've got a crash that's happened on the M25 or whatever, all coming in at the same time. Now you've got to make reasonable adjustments for this person with a learning disability. Whew. That's quite a lot to deal with. And we have to remember the frenetic nature of the environments in which they work. But that does not excuse what I think is the latent, secret, hidden killer, not that secret because we're talking about it now obviously, diagnostic overshadowing. And this is when people put down someone's problems to their learning disability rather than looking behind that and thinking about a biological reason for how the behaviour may have increased or new behaviours been created. Annual health checks. GPs quite like this, they get about £105. Not many of them do it though, and when they do it, they don't do a very good job. So this is what it should cover. It should be a top-to-toe MOT, if you like, of the person. And why is that specifically important for people with a learning disability? Well, because these things are often not picked up, and it does lead to the inequity in life expectancy of people that we saw in the confidential inquiry, which I think is a very, very good piece of work and will take things forward greatly for people. If we've got the whole picture, and then you can imagine what I might be doing at Grammar Street, if you've got the picture from childhood all the way through, isn't that lovely? If we get it right from the start, we will stop people suffering unnecessarily, their families being tortured with anxiety and stress that they didn't need to have. At St George's, we took the view that reasonable adjustments are not just something that's a nice thing to do, because actually that's just not true, is it? It's part of the Equality Act of 2010 and its predecessor, the Disability Discrimination Act. And these are the core reasonable adjustments. And as I know, and I'm happy to be wrong, and I'd love it if I am, we're the only hospital in the country currently that has these as their core reasonable adjustments. If we don't apply these, we are breaking the law, because we've said this is what we're doing to comply with the Equality Act. And they're very easy to do, aren't they? Obviously, we can't get them all the time, because if somebody comes up and we knew they had a learning disability and they want a double appointment, or they want to be first on a list and then somebody else gets bumped off because they need double time, that isn't actually reasonable, is it? That's not fair on other people. But if they know in advance, and we know in advance, then we can really make significant changes.